Hi, this is part 5 of the landscape series. Today I'm going to be working on these back trees in the picture and adding some of the shoreline. If you look real close, it's kind of a bluish green. There's some kind of pale tans and blacks and just a various range of greens in here. And there's even a waterfall, but I'm going to wait to do that. If you look at our picture here, kind of empty back there, so we'll be working with that. Just want to show you some of the things I work with. I have all my paints mixed ahead of time, so I've used some ultramarine and burnt umber to make this kind of grayish black. I've got various greens here. I've got a blue green, a regular green, a yellow green, and kind of an earthy green. I took purple and yellow and I mixed them together to get my tan, so I've added varying stages of white to get a few different values of that, and some blue with some white that I'll probably just kind of touch in here and there for that. I also have my brushes, my water, some fan brushes, and lots of paper towels. So these are the things I do to get started. So the first thing I'm laying down with a tiny round brush is the highlight where the shoreline meets the water. It's a very, very pale blue, almost white. Next, I take my palette knife and I lay down some of the tan for the shoreline. Notice that I'm using the smaller side to the knife while doing this. Doesn't really look like much yet, but give it time. Then I'll start bringing in a lighter tan using the same palette knife, and I'll eventually add some blacks for the shadows. Now I'm going to take a small flat and work in the palest blue-green first. Using only the tip of the brush, I will jab or pounce on marks for the trees. I decided that it was too dark and I made it paler. And I worked in the trees, which will be behind the other trees. So even my trees are layers of trees and layers of different colors. You can see me filling in just large areas here of this pale blue-green. This layer of pale blue-green will be those small areas of light between the trees that you see peeking through this image. I'm using my flat brush and I'll just lay down a large area of pale blue-green, being careful not to touch my shoreline. I'm now going to use my fan brush to pounce in some larger trees, and then taking the flat brush I'll work on the darker areas where the trees meet the greenery along the shore. More fan brush, more flat brush, more fan brush. I'll take the earth green color I mixed and add in some of the greenery between the trees and the shoreline. Taking the dark grayish green black, I'm going to start laying in the majority of the tree line, the darker trees that is. Since the shore is drying now, I can start working horizontally with the paint to lay in some of the darkened areas where the trees and the shoreline meet also. Now the lighter green on the other shore area, making sure the colors do not bleed if it's still damp. After laying in all these darks and lights, I'll end up using a tiny round brush to lay in some of the highlights along the greenery. I keep adding layers of dark, lights, and midtones to give the illusion of light along the shoreline. Layer upon layer. Once I'm finally done with all these details, I'm going to start blocking in large areas of darks. I'm also going to start adding in that giant tree that's in the foreground. Just the darks of it though, not the highlights. I'll be using my fan brush and layer in all these branches of the larger tree. I always work my darks first, and I work very sporadically so it doesn't look too rigid. I'll also go in with a fine brush now and work in some more smaller details. And at the very end, I decided to fill in some of the dark shadows in the foreground since I have all this paint left over, and I didn't want to waste it. So despite it being dark green, I'm actually using brighter hues since it's closer to the viewer. Thanks for tuning in. Part 6 will hopefully be the last installment.